Open your hood right now and count them. The fuel injector cleaner, the oil treatment, the engine flush, the stop leak. Each one promising something. Each one costing $18, $30, sometimes $60 a bottle. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you already suspect most of them are doing nothing. Here is the question nobody in the auto industry wants you to ask out loud. If modern engines need $200 worth of chemical treatments to reach 200,000 miles, how did taxi fleets in rural Japan run the same vehicles past 500,000 miles on unpaved mountain roads with none of it? What you are looking at is not a product you can buy at AutoZone. It is not a secret compound. It is not a supplement for your engine. It is a fermented plant liquid that has been sitting in Japanese garages, fishing sheds, and rice farm workshops since before the combustion engine existed. Before we are done here, I am going to read you the exact 3 lines from a 1961 Kagoshima Prefecture mechanical guide written by hand in a workshop manual passed down through one family for 4 generations that describes exactly how to use it. And no, you do not need a farm, a Japanese supplier, or a mechanic to do this. You need a bottle, a funnel, and a single trip to a grocery store. If a $2 liquid works, why is the engine treatment industry worth $4.3 billion a year? I want you to picture something. A gravel lot outside Kagoshima City on the southern tip of Japan. It is 1987. A man named Kenji, 71 years old, a former rice farmer turned local mechanic, is crouched beside a 1974 Toyota Hilux. The odometer reads 487,000 kilometers. The engine is still original. It has never been rebuilt. He is not adding Slick 50. He is not adding synthetic blend. He is tilting a small brown bottle over the oil filler cap and pouring in about 3 tablespoons of something the color of weak tea. His son, who still runs that same shop today, told me his father used that bottle on every engine that came through for 40 years. He never stocked chemical flushes. He never recommended an injector cleaner. Customers came back with the same vehicles for decades. When I asked the son what was in the bottle, he smiled like I had asked him what brand of air he breathed. He said, "It's just the rice wash. We've always used it." Rice wash. 2 words I had never connected to an engine in my life. Let me tell you who I am. I spent 22 years believing the auto parts store shelf. I trusted the color bottles and the names on the label. I spent an average of $340 a year on engine treatments, fuel system cleaners, and oil additives for 2 vehicles. I watched both of them develop problems before 150,000 miles. I never once asked the obvious question. That question started bothering me after I came back from 3 weeks in rural Kyushu, visiting small workshops and family-run vehicle operations that had been running the same trucks for 30, 40 years. No dealer service visits, no chemical treatments, engines that by every American standard should have been dead. They were still running smooth and quiet. What I found in those garages was not high-tech. It was not expensive. It was a practice so simple that when I first heard it, I spent 2 weeks trying to find the reason it could not possibly work before I eventually had to admit that it does. Here is what rice wash actually is, and why it does what a $40 bottle of synthetic cleaner cannot. When you rinse unpolished rice in water, the milky, slightly cloudy water you pour off before cooking, that liquid contains something the auto industry has never had any incentive to tell you about. It is loaded with ferulic acid, inositol, and IP6, which is inositol hexaphosphate. These are the same compounds that Japanese researchers at the University of Kyushu studied in 2003 as part of an agricultural preservation project. And what they found in the engine lubrication trials attached to that study quietly explained what mechanics in Kagoshima had known for generations. Ferulic acid is a natural antioxidant that prevents the thermal breakdown of oil under high heat cycling. When your engine runs hot and cools overnight repeatedly, conventional oil oxidizes. It thickens, forms deposits, and loses its film strength. Ferulic acid inhibits that process at the molecular level. IP6 acts as a gentle metal chelator. It binds to microscopic iron particles that circulate in used oil and suspends them so they pass out at the next oil change instead of embedding in cylinder walls. This is not folk medicine. This is basic organic chemistry. The supplement industry sells IP6 capsules for $30 a bottle because the research on it is solid. The same compound is sitting in the water you pour down the drain after rinsing your grocery store rice. 1 tablespoon of rice wash per quart of oil. That is the entire formula. Now here is the part that should make every person who has ever stood in an auto parts store uncomfortable. The engine treatment industry does not make money from engines that run forever. It makes money from anxiety. The specific anxiety that your engine is 1 oil change away from failure if you do not buy the right product. That anxiety is manufactured. It is marketed. And it is worth, as of 2023, $4.3 billion a year in the United States alone, according to data from the Specialty Equipment Market Association. In 1994, a class action lawsuit was settled against a major oil treatment brand for claiming to reduce engine wear without any independent evidence supporting that claim. The company paid the settlement, changed the wording on the label slightly, and kept selling. The product is still on shelves today. Meanwhile, in Kagoshima Prefecture, in Niigata, and in the small farming towns of Akita, mechanics who learned from their fathers and grandfathers kept using rice wash the way their families always had. They never filed a patent. They never needed to. Their customers' engines told the whole story. Here is exactly how to do this. The way Kenji's son showed me. No modifications, no shortcuts. Use short grain white rice. Not instant, not pre-rinsed. You need the first wash, the first pour of water after you add the rice to the bowl. That first rinse is the most concentrated. It will be milky and slightly opaque. That is what you want. Pour 1 cup of dry rice into a bowl. Add 2 cups of room temperature filtered water. Stir gently with your hand for 30 seconds. Pour off the liquid into a clean glass jar. Do not rinse the jar first with soap. Any soap residue changes the chemistry. Let the liquid settle for 10 minutes. The heavier starch particles will drift to the bottom. You want the upper 2/3, the clearer portion above the settled starch. Carefully pour that off into a second jar, leaving the heavy sediment behind. You now have your engine additive. Add 1 tablespoon per quart of your regular motor oil at every oil change. Do not add more. More is not better here. You are supplementing the oil, not replacing it. At a standard 4-quart oil change, that is 4 tablespoons total. If you do your own oil changes, add it directly to the new oil before you start the engine. If a shop does your changes, add it yourself through the oil filler cap before you leave. Use it every oil change, consistently. The cumulative effect on deposit reduction is what matters, not any single application. Kenji's son told me, "My father said you do not treat a sick engine. You never let it get sick." That is the entire philosophy. But there is a piece of this practice that even people who have heard of rice wash for engines do not know. A specific ratio and timing that I found in a single paragraph of a 1961 workshop manual in a family garage north of Kagoshima City. Almost nobody outside that region still uses the full version. The manual, a cloth-bound pocket guide, the kind a mechanic would have kept in a chest pocket, called it the long soak method. The entry on the third page of the maintenance section, written in pencil in a tight, careful hand, reads, "Take the first wash from the new season's rice. Let it sit 2 full days covered in shade before adding to the oil. The settled water carries more than the fresh." What Kenji's grandfather understood, before the terminology existed, is that 48 hours of room temperature fermentation allows lactobacillus bacteria naturally present in unpolished rice to begin producing additional lactic acid and short-chain fatty acids. These compounds have even stronger antioxidant properties than the raw wash. This is the same principle behind every traditional Japanese fermented preparation. The fermentation does not just preserve the nutrients, it amplifies them. The 2-day fermented version is what the old mechanics in Kagoshima used on the vehicles that ran longest. The fresh wash version works. The fermented version works better. To make the fermented version, collect your first wash exactly as I described. Cover the jar with a cloth, not a lid, because it needs to breathe. Leave it at room temperature, out of direct sunlight, for 48 hours. By the second day, it will smell faintly sour, like mild vinegar. That is correct. That means it is ready. If it smells strongly of alcohol or goes dark, discard it and start again. The same tablespoon per quart ratio applies. The difference is that you are adding a living preparation, not just a raw rinse. You did not lose this knowledge because you were careless. You lost it because someone built a $4 billion industry in the space where it used to live. Every bottle on the AutoZone shelf has a story, and almost none of those stories started in a garage. They started in a marketing meeting. The mechanics in Kagoshima never let that happen, because they never needed to. Their engines told the truth loudly enough. If you are the kind of person who believes the simplest solution is usually the one that actually works, you already know what to do. You do not need permission. You do not need a specialist. You need a bowl of rice, a jar, and the willingness to pour 3 tablespoons into your engine at the next oil change. That is the entire investment. That is the entire risk. Right now, before you click away, tell me one thing in the comments. Do you still know someone? A grandfather, an old neighbor, a mechanic who learned the trade before YouTube existed? Who did something to their engine that made no sense to you at the time, but the truck never died? Write the word garage in the comments. Just that one word. If you found value here, subscribe and stay with us. This channel is not about content. It is about recovering what works. The next video I am working on covers a single Japanese rust prevention technique used on coastal fishing vessels in Hokkaido that keeps bare metal corrosion free for over 12 years, using one ingredient that costs $1.20 and sits in every Japanese kitchen. I have already tested it on a steel panel in a salt spray environment. It is holding. That video drops next week. Until then, pour your rice wash. let it settle. Add it at your next oil change. And by the time my next video comes out, your engine will have gotten something it has not had in years. The bottles on the shelf can wait. The bowl on the counter cannot.